Hello and welcome to this e-commerce world review webinar about the launch of the Global Fashion Report 2024. I'm Paul Skeldon, one of the editors at RetailX and author of the said Global Fashion Report. You can see the cover there on the slide on your screen. I'm joined today for this webinar where we're going to look at some of the highlights of the report and discuss some of the issues that get thrown up around the global fashion industry by Sam Panza from Talon One. Hi, Sam. For people watching who don't know who the company is, tell us just a little bit about what Talon One does.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Hello, everybody. I'm Sam, Director of Industry Strategy at Talon One. We're a customer incentives platform powering loyalty programs and promotions with brands like Adidas, Sephora, Eddie Bauer, Debenham. So it's a pretty global mix, really just focused on incentivizing the right behaviors, the right rewards in the right channel. So you lead our strategy practice here. So work with brands thinking through how they can run better incentives and launch a good loyalty program. Excited to be here.
Great stuff. Excellent. Glad to have you here. I think, it'd be interesting to talk about the incentivation side of things because that is one of the things that comes up in the report. So what I'm going to do is just very quickly canter through some of the highlights from this year's Global Fashion Report. There's a lot more in the actual report. I've just picked out some of the sort of key findings, really, just as a taster. There'll be a link at the end for those of you who want to download and read it. I strongly suggest you do. So we'll go through that, and then I'll bring Sam back in, and we'll discuss some of the things that the report has thrown up and how that sits around things like profitability and loyalty and cross-channel behaviour and all those sorts of things, just to get a slightly sort of deeper view of some of the aspects of the industry. So, key finding, highlight of the report really is that the global fashion e-commerce market is now worth about $673.6 billion US dollars. As you can see there, it's now way above its pre-pandemic level. It has recovered significantly from the dip that was seen in 2022. That was largely attributable to the sort of geopolitical situation where events in Ukraine in particular impacted energy prices, which had a knock-on effect with inflation and consumer spending and all those sorts of things, which did dent confidence pretty much around the world across all retail sectors. So we did see a little dip there, but it has recovered significantly in 2023, and we entered 2024 in a good place. And as you can see, as usual, the sector is dominated by apparel. We tend to look at apparel, footwear, and accessories as fashion. Obviously, there are other aspects of the fashion industry, and fashion brands often sell other things, including sort of sportswear and health and beauty. But we tend to focus mainly here to make it simple on apparel, footwear, and accessories. Apparel accounts for about 60% of the overall market. I think largely that's attributable to the fact that you buy more clothes. It's as simple as that. Footwear has a lower churn. Accessories are just bought in smaller numbers. So it's dominated by the apparel side, and that's a fairly global phenomenon. And as you can see there, in terms of fashion shopper spend, it's fluctuated as per the global economic market. So where does it fit sort of in terms of online shopping? As you can see there from our consumer survey that we've run at the Consumer X part of our research company, fashion apparel and accessories is the most popular category of retail for buying online, outstripping even groceries, which is a surprise because sort of 10 years ago, it was often viewed as being not something that maybe would lend itself to online. People want to try things on, they want to touch and feel the clothes, and etc. So it's a surprise, really, that sort of that 54.7% of the people we surveyed across the world have bought some form of fashion apparel or accessories online in the past year. So it has a strong online presence. However, that's only part really of the picture. When you look at how people buy the majority of their fashion purchases, they are still tending to do it offline, as you can see there, in a proportion that hasn't really changed significantly. The amount of online grew slightly between 2019 and 2020 because of the pandemic, and it's largely stayed at that level, or like bizarrely consistently. Really, there it changed ever so slightly in 2021, but again, that's still sort of pandemic rules. 2022, 2023, it's remained remarkably consistent. And I think what this is actually pointing to is that I'm going to get ahead of myself there. What it's actually pointing to is how it's not really an online or an offline business. It's a fairly hybrid, cross-channel way of shopping. And I think we are seeing a lot of consumers wanting to buy fashion online, and they are doing so. However, stores still play a very vital role in that. And I think the two working together, researching and looking for inspiration and influence online, and then translating that into sales in store, maybe at the weekend, having spent the week looking online, is why this is painting this sort of picture of there being a significant amount of offline fashion retail, and why it's so consistent. I think it's stayed consistent because people still do like to go to a store and actually try them on and buy them. But what this doesn't show is how much of online is playing a role in getting them there. So I think that's become an interesting change in fashion. We've seen it in other sectors as well, in the other sector reports that are coming out in the coming months. It's a sort of trend that's sort of certainly being seen across most aspects of retail. And I think it is an interesting post-pandemic change. It did shift people into more of an online mindset, yet it hasn't taken away the love of physical retail, particularly in fashion. What it's done is created this more hybrid approach, which is very interesting. If you look at how money is spent on them there, Africa, fairly sort of flat. It's not really a big fashion e-commerce market currently. I think it has potential to grow, but we are seeing a large amount of the sales are coming there from, of course, the Americas and from Asia and from Europe, which is not really a surprise. I think the sort of level of fashion spend in Asia is more surprising, as it's sort of lower than you might expect. And in some other sectors, Asia leads the way purely in terms of volume. There are more people buying more stuff. Often a lower price point, but overall it drives up the revenue side of things. So fashion is still quite dominated by the more traditional and established markets in the Americas and Europe. So device usage of those that are buying online, bearing in mind that's like 21% of fashion sales are taking place digitally in some way, shape or form. It is now predominantly, to quite an extraordinary extent, mobile. And again, the consistency of mobile's reach is quite sort of significant as well. There's big change there between 2020 really and 2021, 22 over the pandemic, where I think the growth in e-commerce in fashion, a lot of it was translated into mobile. People new to it in particular, you know, their experience up to that point of the internet was via their smartphone, and that's what they did. And I think that trend has continued. I think this move to a more hybrid model where stores play an important part in it as well is also helping fuel the use of mobile, because that's where people are getting influence, and that's where people are increasingly sort of using social media, and they're using mobile marketing to be to see the fashion they want to buy. They're also using it to then find where that fashion is, and then they're using it often in the stores to redeem loyalty and to redeem coupons and discounts, and to even pay because their card's buried in their phone. So the role of mobile in fashion globally is huge. What's interesting is if you look at the use of mobile in fashion retail by country, it's reasonably consistent in most markets, apart from in Asia, where it's so dominated by mobile, it's untrue. Now, a lot of that is centered around China and India, where there's a huge swell of newer, younger, upwardly mobile shoppers, all of them digital natives, all of them quite young, and they are just mobile first. And I think that's driven this move to sort of mobile being the predominant way of doing not just fashion shopping, in Asia, but everything. And I think that's really well reflected here, that it's just absolutely dominates the online side. So if you're looking to do business in Asia, you have to be mobile first. That said, I think you still probably needs to really be thinking in that way to do business in any of these markets, because even in Africa, where e-commerce penetration is low, it's still not quite dominated by mobile, but it's going in that direction. And I think, as you see in Americas, it's just in favour of mobile. Australia, Europe, it's borderline 50-50. So it's a vital part of it. But in Asia, very much a mobile first market. So getting back to this idea of the hybrid approach to shopping, if you look at all the sort of retail sectors, you can see there that fashion and apparel, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over from the left there. It has quite a high proportion of people who claim to buy equally online and in physical stores, 35.4%, in fact, which is, if you look at the sort of dark blue bands there, it is one of the highest of all the retail sectors. Now, again, I think this reflects, one, a move towards online fashion in the pandemic that's sort of stuck, and two, I think it is that a lot of these people are young. And I've got teenage kids myself. They love going shopping. They do a lot of it on their mobiles, but a lot of it is sort of finding what it is they want, and then at the weekend they go and actually sort of make a day of it and go and buy it at a physical store. And I think that's very well reflected here. And like I say, compared to most other sectors, it is one of the leaders in terms of this sort of more hybrid, equal use of online and physical stores to buy stuff. I think, again, this belies how much of a role mobile in particular plays in getting them to the purchase point. It's not just about whether they buy online or offline. Online, particularly mobile, plays a very key role in getting them to that point of purchase. It's where they get their inspiration. And I think you can't stress that really enough. That's just a quick sort of snapshot there in terms of what they're spending. As you can see, in fashion, apparel, and accessories, the largest sort of chunk there is at the low end, the $13 to $130 mark. That's slightly above most other sectors of retail. Again, I think this is something that retailers need to bear in mind, that it's a volume game, particularly in fashion. I think fast fashion, pile them high, sell them cheap, is still a very predominant model. There's a huge amount of discounting goes on in fashion. Margins are very tight, which we'll come to when we have a discussion with Sam at the end. And I think this sort of, just shows that it is a low value business largely. Of course, there are higher end fashion retailers. There are the whole luxury industry. There's another webinar this week on the luxury report, which is funnily enough coming the other way. The high cost luxury items are having to sort of temper their price downwards towards the more affordable luxury ends to cater to the growing market of luxury shoppers who want something that's luxury but affordable. So somewhere in the middle there is a sweet spot of affordable fashion luxury, but typically it's a low value business, and fast fashion drives that, despite all the concerns about the environment and sustainability, which we'll come to shortly. Fast fashion still dominates by a long way, and that's reflected in how people spend on fashion. So where are they buying? As we said earlier on, India, China are way ahead really of where people are buying online in their fashion. These are two huge growth markets. They've got a new and emergent middle class, newly moneyed. A lot of these shoppers are quite young, to some degree, without sounding patronising. They're newer to online fashion shopping, and they're really going for it. And that's reflected in the fact that, like, these two markets alone are noticeably more prevalent than the others. And if you look at those top 13 countries, 12 countries there, it's interesting how the established markets of the US, UK, Canada, Australia are down the sort of lower end. They're not low. They're still obviously very lucrative markets, and there's a lot of people buying, and obviously people spend more per item. But it's these new markets that are dominating in terms of fashion, and that's where, in many ways, the real opportunities lie for fashion brands is in tapping into these markets. Of course, it's a huge domestic market for these things. A lot of the garments, in fact, are produced in these two countries. But there is a huge potential there because shoppers here are hungry for fashion. Generation-wise, I think it's probably no surprise to anyone that it's the younger end of the market where most online fashion sales take place. Fashion is more of a young man's game, really. As you get older, you sort of tend to lose interest. But that said, even the boomers there, the 60 pluses, still 40% of them have bought something fashion related online in the past year. So that's not bad for us old timers. We're doing it too. Not quite to the same extent as Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, but it's still significant. But it's these younger shoppers, particularly in these leading markets of China and India, who are driving the growth. And from what the research shows, that's set to continue, barring sort of unforeseen macroeconomic sort of impacts. It's likely to continue, and that's where the growth is going to be, and that's where the opportunity is. But it is a volume game, not a margin game. The price per item is very low. The spend per item is very low. So generating growth comes at generating vast sales. Again, how it's split by income. I mean, again, probably no great surprise that it's mainly middle to higher income people who are spending. Though, of course, half of those on the lower income are also shopping for fashion online. Again, driven by cheaper, fast fashion clothing. That I don't think really sort of is of any surprise to anybody. We mentioned sustainability. Despite the fact that there's a huge interest in it, as you can see there, clothing tops the list of the sustainable purchases made in the past year. At nearly 50% of people have bought something on sustainable grounds in clothing. Sort of 30-odd% there in footwear, about 20% in accessories. Despite this, there's still the vast majority is fast fashion. Is what accounts for the sales, and it's the appeal of being able to get fashionable, quick churn clothes that really drives the market. And of course, that's what fashion's predicated on. Is seasons change, fashions change very regularly, and so you keep updating your wardrobe, and so you keep spending. Sort of an inbuilt growth mechanism. Fast fashion delivers that very well. Concerns around the environmental and ethical impact of that is starting to grow. It will have an impact. It is having an impact. It's just a slow burn and a slow impact. And there's always, particularly with sort of a global economy that's not, buoyant as such at the moment, that slows down the move away from disposable fast fashion. I think we're going to continue to see a lot of that in all of these markets, even the sort of new and developing ones. Second-hand purchases of fashion have grown. Round about a third there of shoppers' questions have bought some form of second-hand or refurbished clothing in the past year. However, that's quite low. It's only a fifth. Outstrips pretty much everything else apart from those that don't buy any. And it is a growing market, and it is a multi-billion-pound industry, and we have seen lots of retailers start to work in the resale of goods and the recycling of goods, but the whole vintage market, people like Vinted, Depop, all those sort of companies do very well off the back of the secondhand market. It has grown. It does continue to grow year by year as we do these reports. It just doesn't grow very rapidly, and I think it had a moment maybe last year really where it was very popular. My gut feel is that it's losing popularity as the economy improves and fashions change. The sort of desire for secondhand, vintage, that sort of thing wanes slightly. But it'd be interesting to see. And I think, still quite a big movement of people who do want to be sustainable, who do want to repair and reuse, who do want unique pieces. They want to step outside of that high street fashion and the fast fashion model. So I think we might see, slow growth in secondhand. I don't think it's ever going to come to dominate the fashion market. It's always going to be around about that sort of 20 to 30% of people buying it. But that's a significant contribution. And as the overall fashion market grows, obviously that 20 to 30% becomes more valuable. So, looking ahead slightly, how people foresee their changing spending habits around fashion. As you can see there in clothing, footwear, and accessories, which are over to the sort of left-hand side of the centre. You can see that largely they're looking to increase their spending to some degree. If you sort of squint and just compare the light blues across all those sectors, it's one of or clothing in particular is one of the sort of areas that's going to see a 40% of people looking to spend more in the coming year. It's slightly less in footwear, slightly less in accessories, but again, encouraging that at the very least, spending on fashion is going to grow slightly as people tend to spend or want to spend more on it. So, a healthy outlook for the future. I think there are trends that will impact that and change that, but largely fashion is one of those industries that keeps rolling along because it's self sort of perpetuating because of the changing styles and changing fashions and the huge sort of industry around sort of promoting fashion. I think what will change is sort of where people find their inspiration. What will change for retailers is having to sort of address the profitability side of things because of the vast amount of discounting that goes on and trying to find enough growth out of the growing markets when people want things that are cheaper and cheaper all the time. So that is a whistle stop through some of the key findings in our report. There's much more in there. It goes into a much more detail. There's a lot of profiles of sort of fashion retailers and fashion brands from around the world as well. Some as well I've tried to pick out that are less well known, particularly in Europe, just to get a sense of how some of the markets are shaping up, particularly in places like India and China. So download the report, the link's there. It's not actually been published yet, but it will be in the next week or two. But you can go to that link and express your interest, and it will be sent to you as soon as it's available. So that's some of the key highlights. So Sam, thank you for sitting patiently through all of that. Hopefully, a lot of that sort of chimes with what you're seeing in the fashion markets. What are some of your thoughts, sort of, particularly around sort of say the sort of kind of profitability side of it? Because they're obviously trying to grow, but it is a very low margin business. So what are your thoughts?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I kind of breathed a sigh of relief, I guess, at some of the general notes on growth in 2023. Because it was a question mark. I think one thing that we see across the market, and just kind of wrapped up a big earnings call season here and was paying a lot of attention to how brands navigated 23. I feel like one thing we saw a lot is that revenue looked okay, or revenue went up, but margin, got battered in 2022. And smart retailers started to kind of crawl back on that, or I don't know, start to recover margin and profit in 23 and get a bit smart about how they're, stop chasing unprofitable customers and that kind of thing. So I think the profitability story is a bit more murky, in 2023 and in the US and Europe. I think brands really had to chase customers still and led with deals much more than they would have liked. In 2022 is a similar story, but there was also an inventory pileup when demand softened after supply chains recovered post-COVID. But I mean, the average discount rate in retail, I think, is 17 or 18%, and even in premium, that's still at 10%. In other categories like beauty, it's in the 30s. So it is a huge piece of your listed price that's being promoted away, and I think that brands just had to do a whole heck of a lot of that in 23.
How sustainable is that sort of level of discounting? Is that something that's sort of baked in now to how fashion retail works, or are there ways of sort of moving beyond that and sort of maybe creating a slightly different business model?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that a lot of brands are realizing that, how unsustainable that is, and you get stuck with these. I don't know. I mean, discounting in particular does a lot of really destructive things. For one, it conditions your customer to expect more deals and to only buy with discount. Obviously, it wipes out the margin and profit contribution of the discounted session. There's some research that shows that the perceived quality of items decreases when there's a price promotion on it, and it also affects like the brand premium as well. So the quality of the brand kind of dips down. So there's lots of risk there. The other kind of big story we've been paying a lot of attention to the last two or 3 years is regulation around price transparency. So in the European Union, there's pricing rules that you can't show, like when you're showing a markdown price or price reduction, the original price needs to be real. You need to have sold at that price in the last 30 days. In the US, the enforcement's a bit different, but the Federal Trade Commission has identified that as a dark pattern. Funny enough, even in the State of the Union address a couple of weeks ago, that was a big topic of like hidden fees and fake pricing and stuff. So it definitely has attention in the Oval Office. In addition to the FTC is really kind of trying to step in and protect consumers from misleading pricing practices across industries. So there's a regulatory story, there's a profit story, there's what does this do to your consumer? And if brands aren't able to kind of rehabilitate that, if they did run more discounts than they would have liked, that's trouble.
No, absolutely. Is the discounting thing, do you know, equally a challenge in emerging markets, sort of like India and China, or is it something more confined to the established markets in the US and Europe?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do a lot of work in the Middle East and in APAC and Latin America, and there's I mean, there is a lot of cultural difference in like how price is communicated and kind of an expectation that price is a bit more fluid in different markets. So the both the rule books and the consumer expectation varies a lot. I think that one thing we see from our APAC customers in particular is like for the price promotions and the discounting that they do, at least to focus on doing that in a way that's more brand building. So making that more gamified or more fun, or kind of showing consumers they work towards deals with, with taking desirable actions. But I do think there's more of an expectation. Definitely see that with our Middle Eastern customers that, that I don't know, if there's not like a reduction in price, then the likelihood of purchase really decreases, and then the regulatory stuff is obviously all over the place. So I just know that the EU and the US story more than what's going on in other markets. But I do feel like there's I mean, I love the global perspective of this report, and that's kind of the thing I find really helpful in the asset. Like in Europe, we've really been seeing the rapid rise of Temu in the last year. I mean, Shane's been around for a little longer. But Temu, for example, like 1 in 4 Germans. So we're a German company. We're operate globally, but I'm American, but work in our Berlin office. 1 in 4 Germans have ordered with Temu in Temu's like first year in the market. And Temu just like doesn't look like any European and certainly any German retailer. Like the consumer experience is really different. It's like very bells and whistle, gamified, countdown deals, and the personalization they do is really sophisticated too. And it's just grabbing so much of the share. Obviously a lot of the products on there don't make any sense. I saw a pair of boots on there that was literally selling for like one pence or something. It's just some stuff just is truly a grow at all costs mindset that most of us had to abandon 12 24 months ago. But that's going to change consumer behavior. Like as you see more of these like really sophisticated, gamified, personalized brands from APAC really make massive waves in the US and Europe. I think that's going to kind of put something different in front of consumers. And the world is so global. Like I think 1 in 5 Germans was born abroad too. So it's like, I don't know, people come from different consumer experiences too in the West.
Yeah.
So there's so much change here, and I don't know where it's going to go, but there's
no, it's interesting. What I find interesting is that in my house, I've got two teenage daughters, and obviously my wife's discovered Temu,
Uh-huh.
and she's not really technically minded at all. And even though it is actually it's quite daunting to use if you're over a certain age. I'll put it politely, but she loves it because the
Interesting.
bargain that you get is huge. Meanwhile, my kids are just all over Shein all the time. Like
Huh.
everything is that's where they go to do online shopping. That's where they go to muck about and look at stuff.
Yeah,
And you think
interesting.
that's something that's emerged here in my house in the
Yeah,
last
right.
3 months, maybe.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen on that microscopic level a fundamental shift in fashion shopping habits just in
Yeah.
my house.
I think
And I think yes, it has a huge knock-on effect because that will be happening all around,
yeah.
and so I think it does change the game considerably.
I think it's
'Cause
also really changing how people discover products too. Like more, for a long time, like really all product searches were starting on Google, then more and more started on Amazon, and now it
mm,
does feel like fashion discovery is starting on TikTok,
yeah,
Shane,
yeah.
a little bit Temu as well. So like, where you first encounter your next journey might not end there, but at least it's starting there. And
I
that's a big
think so.
change from just walking the high
And
street.
I think as well, seeing things like sort of having things being promoted that are on Shein or Temu on TikTok. My kids
Yeah.
see them on TikTok, and that sort of is almost an endorsement that this must be okay. So we'll go and
Mm.
look at it there. So I think, again, that's another shift really in how people shop. It'd be interesting because a year ago we wouldn't be talking about, probably not Temu at least anyway. But what will it be this time next year? Because things in fashion move very quickly. Which brings us to loyalty, because shoppers aren't that loyal, particularly when faced with all these new sort of startup sites like Temu, Shein, and many others. What are some of the trends do you see sort of around loyalty in fashion, and like what role can loyalty play in helping retailers hold on to customers and increase margin and that
Yeah.
sort of thing?
Yeah, you bet. I mean, it has been a huge area of growth in the last year, largely because you're getting fewer new customers. So how do you maximize your relationship, increase revenue, and decrease churn with your existing customers has been like a more core question in the last year or two. Obviously, the loyalty program's been around for decades. In retail in particular, kind of getting back to that point about how do we like break this like discount death spiral that a lot of brands find themselves in. The loyalty can actually play a really significant role in that, and that it builds more of a known customer base, and it lets you shift your value proposition from kind of uncompelling site-wide 20 or 30% to even like a really attractive cashback is still going to be 2 or 4%, and it's always for the previous purchase. So if you can show the user that that there's value in like a core loyalty program, you can just decrease like the liability of your general incentives mix, and you can also kind of claw back your promotional contact with unprofitable customers. So like ASOS has published some really interesting stuff in the last year about got this small slice of our base where we're losing millions and millions of pounds because they use this as a fitting room at home. They return a lot of items. They're always using promotions, and kind of thinking how do we pull back our contact with those unprofitable customers and really invest in millions of customers who are really healthy and engaged with the brand and stuff. So I think we see a lot of kind of just questioning like what are we doing on the general incentives, and then a lot of brands use loyalty programs like that's their main way that they deliver value to members. So yeah, I mean, like Sephora has got a best in class loyalty program for sure, and like that it's transactionally valuable, but more of the like the member promotions they run are like cross sell and upsell. The redemption behavior is more in like the reward bazaar, where it's like a curated place to go and redeem on certain items versus just being able to cash out for to spend your points. So yeah, I mean they can be really 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 powerful. Yeah, I mean it can be really kind of a great tool to like clean up your incentives mix in general, and then lots of cool branding stuff and loyalty too of kind of how do you use a loyalty program as a vehicle to tell your brand story in a different way, or to kind of, I don't know, just put the packaging, the loyalty program in a way that resonates with your ideal customer profile or your brand values. If you're, sustainable, then celebrating how much, I don't know, sustainable cotton or recycled materials you've helped put to use through the loyalty program. I think there's so much you can do from a brand perspective, as well with loyalty. And of course, there's a difference between the loyalty program and loyalty marketing, and then just general customer loyalty too. So you can do lots of good loyalty thinking without having a program. You don't need points and tiers to, you shouldn't rely on points and tiers to do loyalty work. You should kind of be thinking more generally, but how do we build a closer relationship with our best customers?
What are some of the sort of interesting loyalty sort of plays that you've seen? Because obviously there's a problem with discounting, and to some degree loyalty schemes are sort of like a sanctioned form of discounting.
Yeah, exactly.
But what are some of the other ways of sort of using sort of the customer loyalty to sort of I guess, but I don't know what the word is, like not to just rely on sort of loyalty schemes being a discount. Like what else? What are some of the interesting things brands are doing to sort of maintain loyalty? Apart from just giving money off.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's two big ones that come to mind. The first is just using the loyalty program to advance your data strategy. So in that side, it's really kind of, how do we use the loyalty program to collect more first party data just by getting opt-in and recognizing user cross sessions, that kind of thing, but also the zero party data side. So it doesn't make sense for every brand to collect zero party data, and a lot of brands collect zero party data without having any vision of what to use it for. And with zero party, I'm just talking about like specific data the customer shares with the brand, not observational data. So like a preference center, a quiz, or kind of, some way of telling you who I am, what I'm after, what products I'm interested in. So that's one big area, the zero party data collection. So, like Adidas, when you sign up for Adi Club, you can enrich your you can just list like the sports that you care about. You'll get some extra points for that. And that kind of thing's been more relevant as, third party data continues to fly out the window. It's just harder and harder to recognize who customers are across sessions. Like if you look at the match rate of software that recognizes is this Paul from last time, or is this a different guy? With less third-party data, it's harder to recognize Paul across sessions. So having like your own kind of data foundation and not rely on the third-party data, it's getting both worse and more expensive too, is really powerful. The second area is like loyalty programs are great at non-transactional, both on if you think about like earn and burn. So how do you collect value and how do you redeem it with the program? You can take like a non-transactional approach on both sides of that. So the first is like, is it worth it to reward, behaviors other than spending? So data sharing, but also like, for Adidas, again, that going for a run or logging a Les Mills workout, those kinds of things, you can get points for that. And then on the burn side, being able to spend points on, or just use your status if you have status, or just by being in the program, getting, I don't know, early access to new item drops, or content, experiences, all of those kinds of things. We've got like a luxury department store customer in Canada, Harry Rosen, that's really, really cool brand. And their loyalty program is more about like, at certain tiers, you get free alterations, free garment maintenance, like a print catalog of kind of the new stuff they have in store. And it's in lots of like in-store activations and events as well. So then kind of, in that sense, like what's like the emotional terrain surrounding our brand, and how do we use the loyalty program to celebrate that and gain more, share mind, share life, whatever you call it.
Interesting. And of course, sort of, you mentioned there that's kind of cross-channel to some degree. The Canadian example you give there, that sort of it does involve online and in store. That's one of the sort of things that came out of the research that's in the report, as I mentioned in the presentation, is that the shoppers of fashion are increasingly hybrid, increasingly sort of cross-channel. So what are you sort of seeing in that side of things, that kind of use of mobile in store and the use of mobile to drive people to buy in store and online? What how does that sort of fit in?
Yeah. I mean, traditionally, like you're recognizing the same user across sessions just by card linking, which obviously still works, but the loyalty program can also can like give like a I don't know, like a transparent and value adding way for your member to identify themselves in store. So I've seen like, even like a department store, I'm forgetting who it was, where like whenever you come into the shop, if you scan your membership information, you can get like a free coffee at their coffee bar when you come in. So those kinds of things, like, can you use the loyalty program just as an excuse to recognize the member, to, if that's scanning a QR code, or, the old school thing of just telling them your phone number or email address at the till. So I think loyalty programs can just give the member a reason to like identify themselves across channels. And obviously, like, it both gives the member like reasons to, I don't know, check their profile page, see how close they are to the next reward. And then loyalty programs create like new marketing moments for the brand. And those can either be kind of, at the pointy end of loyalty, which is like, how close are you to the next tier? Are your points about to expire? Those kinds of signals about like, where are you at with the status? But one thing we've seen a lot of growth in, and that I just love, is like using the loyalty program as kind of the central pillar of like big brand activations. So like a member day, a member week, lots of kind of clever things there in fashion and retail about, I don't know, like when you introduce new items and do double points for members for a couple days, or early access for members. And just kind of like really bringing the brand to life and using the loyalty program as like a centerpiece of those big like lightning strike moments for the brand.
Interesting. I guess as well, this sort of collecting data, however you do it, is becoming increasingly important, isn't it? As sort of cookies become outlawed, and all brands need to rely now on first-party data where they can get hold of it. So anything that helps drive that engagement, helps you spot who's doing what across channels, is all vital stuff to all retailers, not just those in fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like in loyalty, it's like, collect more zero-party data, collect more first-party opt-in, and decrease your reliance on third-party data, so it can kind of help you at like every category of like of customer data. And I mean, the wind has been blowing in this direction for years and years, but ultimately, like we all know that marketing in most of the world needs to become more transparent. That both through the third party data challenges and just general kind of consumer, I don't know, I think that there's just more of an expectation that brands are being open about what they want your data for, how you're using it. So you need to kind of build your own house and not rely on kind of creepy third party stuff.
No, quite absolutely. And that's an excellent point to finish on, I think. So, Sam, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your wisdom across that. I think all the things that you guys do really fit beautifully into sort of the findings of the report as well. So lovely talk there. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for watching. Do go to the link and sign up to download the report when it's published in a week or two. There's an excellent article in there by Sam that does actually look into what happens with ASOS and how they sort of turn things around that, because there's some interesting stats about sort of how much it was costing them. So if you read nothing else, read that. It's an excellent piece that's in the report. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Sam, again, thank you very much for your time and sharing your wisdom, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, Paul. Bye all.